Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership of the Heart podcast. And today I am thrilled, really tickled to be speaking with Nana Appiah. He and I actually worked together at in a county in Colorado called Adams County. And we didn't do a lot of close work together, but we had a lot of, we just had exchanges. And I always sensed a certain level of courteousness and heart-based kind of leadership out of him. And I saw recently something on LinkedIn where he was promoted to a position, and I didn't even know he was out of the state. So he's in Arizona, and I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, I just love that guy, and I've got to get him on the podcast. So that is why you're here, Nana.
Hi, thank you, and I really appreciate that. And I did enjoy working with you in Colorado, and you brought a whole experience of customer service and the different way of looking at customer service. So anytime I think about customer service, you come in mind straight away. So I was excited when you reached out to me. So
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Hey, I want to leave that legacy or imprint in people's minds. Maybe it's something different. So that's good.
absolutely.
Okay. So where are you right now in your leadership journey? Where are you at?
That's a good question. In terms of what is formal and informal stage of where I am right now. So with a formal stage, I used to be the planning director for City of Mesa. And then end of last year, I got promoted to the development services director, which I oversee planning, building division, building inspections, plan reviews, and permitting. So in terms of formal leadership, I'm really one of the executive staff in the city of Mesa. So we have the city manager and the assistants and then the department head. So I have a huge responsibility of formal leadership in the city. So that's the formal and then informal leadership, which has always been a critical part of what I do, because I always believe that the informal leadership is really the 360 part of our life, where you have to be conscious of your leadership in your social circles, your leadership within your formal organization, and even your leadership in your friends. So when you ask me, where am I in my leadership, I think I'm still growing, I'm still learning. And why I say that is because I have mentors in my life that anytime I talk to them, it shows me that there's still room for me to grow. And then even when I talk to people that formally and informally I mentor, when I talk to them, I also realize there's still room for me to grow as well. So it's a journey of learning, and that's what I would say, that I'm still learning to be the best that I can be. I'm still learning how to be a good leader, and that's where I am.
Where did you learn the one thing I always think about you is like the poise, the graciousness, like the humility. Where did that come from? I'm curious to know where that leadership style came from for you.
Well, it comes from different areas in my life. Also, just growing up, I grew up in Ghana. And growing up in Ghana, where I went to boarding school at the age of 11, I learned a lot how to survive in situational leadership, where in the boarding school, you need to know when to be when you have to really push forward, and you also have to learn when you have to lay back. And so that strategy really, in a way, though I was a little, helped me as well. And then also the mentors I've had in my life, where I look back, where even professionally, I remember when I started, as much as I was passionate and I was energetic and I'm always learning, there was so a huge learning curve. And I just learned the grace that I received from some of my leaders. And one example being in our planning profession. I remember when I was in Florida, I was one of my first projects. I was given a project to review for the Marriott. So for Marriott, they have their hotels, they call them the courtyard. And so I got a plan I'm reviewing, and I see the label courtyard. And I got so mad. I went to my boss and I said, this plan is not adequate. They only give us a courtyard instead of, it was a whole project. But I just thought it was just a courtyard. And so she looked at me graciously and was like, bring the plans. And she started showing me it's a name, it's a brand, it's not the actual location of only the courtyard. And it always reminds me when I'm dealing with people and staff who are also learning. that somebody extended that grace to me. And that grace has always been something that I'm conscious of because of I've gotten to where I am because people were gracious, invested in me, and also at the same time held me accountable. So that's really that. And at the end of the day, there is also a strong faith in me as well. I have a strong faith, and that always also lead me to my decisions and how to be gracious to people because at the end of the day, there is good and best in everyone. And even though situations may not lend itself, you have to always see the best out of a person that you work with or relate with. And that gives me that level of grace as well. So
I'm curious to know, like the people who've reported to you over these years, what would they say about your leadership style?
I think they would say diverse because what I mean by diverse is there are times I'm very strict, I'm very straightforward, I'm very directive. But there are times I'm also very much collaborative, very much participatory, where I'm engaging with them, asking them for their feedback, asking them. And there are times I'm also really just graceful. Let's go to lunch. Let's just talk. Or just come sit in my office and just have the conversation. And so even and as a leader, there are times people that I supervise have been mad and upset with me because I see things differently at a higher level. But one thing I can always say that everybody that I've worked with or supervised, they go to other organizations and they come back and call me or text me or I see them at conferences and they always tell me, Nana, remember when you used to say this? I've been saying this, or when you said we should be doing this, that's what I've been doing. And I look back and it just brings me that level of satisfaction that at the time when I was dealing with them, they probably were like, who is this guy? Why? And then they and they learned. And one story I have actually was when I was in Adams County, one of very highly talented staff person was a planner, was always doing great. And she was always the one that was giving me a hard time. And I felt like, well, why is she? Because I always expected the best out of her because she was great and has the skill set and competency. So I always saw room for her to continue to grow. So I was always pushing the limits, the boundaries with her. And I think so she probably got mad at me, like, why you anyway? So when I was living in Adams County and I had just gotten a new cell phone, and so I was walking past her office and I said, hey, text me your number, because I don't have your new cell phone number. And then she texts me, but I had not seen the text. And that was like a day before I left or something. So I walked past her office again. I said, you are absolutely one of my favorite staff and planners, and I really, really cherish you. And she said, have you read the text message I sent to you? And I said, no. And she said, I sent you the text and I said, this is, so and so, your favorite planner. And it took me by surprise because she was always fighting with me. She was always bumping heads with me. But when she sent that text, I was really taken back and I just realized that leadership and pushing her to the limits and the boundaries, she still recognized that at the end of the day, I have her best interest. And even though in staff meetings, she will be the one always challenging me and always, I'm like, can I get a break? But when she sent that text, it really, really moved me and it gave me a whole different perception of leadership because your staff and people you lead always can see through your heart. And even though you may be challenging them and pushing them off the limits and all that, they always know and can see the intent of what you're trying to do. So
that's amazing. I got me a little teary-eyed there. I'm one of those people I get. Yeah. I'm just a crier. So I'm like, oh. Okay. So I am curious because, and this is a little off, but it still I am curious. How is it working in local government being an African-American gentleman? Like, how does somebody from Ghana, not even African-American, somebody from Ghana. So then you got that history. How has that been? Has that been extra challenging? I mean, you're not like you have anything to compare it to. I mean, you might be looking around at your coworkers, but do you ever sense does it ever, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, did you ever sense anything different there, or you always felt like everything's been really like awesome and you've just never been treated any differently?
On the normal scale, I think I've been treated fairly in terms of people dealing with me with the level of my competency and work and all that. And I've always had a great leadership team that I've worked for. And I always consider that when I'm taking
Nice.
a job. So, example, when I was in Adams County, Ray actually was the one that called me when I was in Texas to get me back to Colorado. And I knew that was a leader that will always support me. And so that was a major factor in me making a decision. And then when I was sitting in starting my career back in Florida and then in Texas, I had my director who um, had my back. And so long as I have that leader who will always support me, and even here in Mesa, I had an amazing boss. I had a great city manager that has really supported me, and I've never sensed anything. But having said that, I don't want to overlook the challenges. Yes, there's been very much situations in other places that I've worked. I haven't really seen that here in Mesa because I may be on a whole different level, but especially when I was in the entry level and all that, I've had few blatant statements made against me in Florida, in Texas. So it's not been, but the majority of the community that I've encountered, I've always really dealt with me with the level of competency and hasn't really related to me as to my race and
Mm-hmm.
color and all that. But obviously, but that's not to say I haven't encountered those statements where some people have called and said, will have a conversation with me. And then once they start realizing that I'm not really giving them what they want, they will turn it and somebody blatantly the person had talked to me for like 10 minutes, understanding everything I'm saying. Once I told her what the rules are, the requirements and all that, turned and said, I can't even understand anything you're saying. You need to go learn how to speak English. So those are the challenges, but
Mm,
I would say those are never the norm. Those are absolutely the abnormalities. I mean, I can
mm.
count few of those, but there's always challenges. And I think, and also being graceful and focusing on the mission always get people turn around to deal with you on the issues rather than really attacking the personalities. So, yeah.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I felt like I wanted to go there. It was sometimes it's like the things that people might be wondering, and I never ask. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if
Yeah.
someone's wondering this. I'm kind of wondering this. I want to see what you think.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm curious now. So for those who are listening, this is kind of the time where I ask everybody. I do this every single episode is asking, about a time when maybe you weren't the most caring leader, where you didn't think, you think back on a specific story where you weren't leading with heart, and what did you do to come out of it, and like what was your solution to come out of it? But then also like how did you have your awareness around it? What made you aware that you weren't in the best state you could be as a leader?
There's been few times where I've looked back and realizing that, I am very driven. When I did a strength finder, I actually, one of my number one strength was achiever. And so somebody like me with the number one strength being an achiever, you get things done and you move on. You really don't look back to calm down, celebrate the success, and enjoy it. For me, it's like, oh, that's done. We move on. There are other things to do next. And I think looking back few instances, those are the times where I would have said it wasn't the best part of me showing that kind of being a caring leader because my team did work so hard and got things done and accomplished. And it would have been great to really just sit back and enjoy and celebrate those wins. Instead, I'm like, guys, you did a great job. And, this is the next thing we're going to do. And I think sometimes people just get worn out. And though I do appreciate and sometimes I express it, once you deliberately celebrate those successes and those wins, it really helps the team to understand how much you appreciate them. And I always say that because when I was in Adams County, when Kristen Sullivan was my boss, that's one thing I learned from Kristen, because when we accomplish something great, Kristen would tell me, Nana, I'm going to get you out of the office. You're going to go celebrate. And I know this is like kind of, what is it called? Not the punishment, but I can't think of the word. But she's like, I'm going to, we're going to go to the sword cutting ceremony. We're going to do lunch with all the team, and you're going to feel comfortable and enjoy the moment. And I'm like, we've got so many other things to do. But that's one thing I think, when you're back to the question about not being a caring leader, it wasn't intentional, but some of those actions, I look back and it informs me, those are all the things that I think moving forward helps me to really pay attention to those things, and acknowledge the successes, acknowledge the wins from the team, and help them to really see that they are really appreciated. So.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. We all have that kind of Achilles heel, and I'm a doer too. And sometimes I have to remember, like I always say, I write on this, I speak on this, I teach on this. And having said that, I'm still the one who's like falling short, here and there and all over the place.
Yes.
So trying to get better and get back on track is kind of the key,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So now we're at the point in the podcast where you can ask me anything you like. Like you can turn the tables on me. My focus since I left Adams County, well, actually, while I was there, was on employee engagement, trying to make sure we can have the voice of the employees and making sure that we can retain our best people and, really building up leaders. So what might be a question you might have for me? And you kind of turn into the host and I answer the question for you.
So a couple of questions, we're still talking about employee engagement. And it's interesting how the past 2 years with the pandemic, where the whole idea of working remotely is now taking the front and center or stage of what we do, even the public facing organizations like us. So there is a strong desire for certain staff to really work remotely and all that. Which is, what's your perspective about how do you continue to create that employee engagement when it's not the norm, where you just walk to somebody's office if they are not picking up their phone or emails, and you still can talk to them and engage them. But with the media, with that kind of electronic communication, sometimes it also takes away the actual human connection. So how do we encourage that engagement through this kind of medium of communication?
Yeah. What I tell people is that, we learned so much during these last couple of years about people's lives because we were watching them on the screen. In most cases, not in some cases, some organizations never went virtual, so they've always still been right on site. But for at least a few weeks, there was a complete shutdown, and we were seeing more of people on their screens, which means like right now I just have a wall behind me, and there's really no chance of anybody going behind me. But I have a dog that's right underneath my table. And sometimes she sits right here and she's like staring at the screen and going like, what's going on up there? And so then I'll like turn over my screen and I'll show you my dog, right? Or sometimes like where you're at, if you're at home, you could have like an elderly parent that's walking by, or there could be like your child that's walking by. And what I think happened during this time is that we did learn more about our people than we did when they were in person. Because we had no choice. There was nothing to hide. We couldn't hide. They tried to with that like little Teams meeting blurred out thing that happens, but people still can put their arms right through that. They can put their heads right through that. There's really no hiding. So I would say that what we learned during that time, don't let it go when you get back in the office. So continue to build upon what you know about the person, even remotely, if they are remote, and making sure that you have a cadence of meeting with them. If it's a direct report, like put it on there once a week, even if it's 30 minutes. And don't make it always about the projects and the processes. So like for me, every Monday morning, I have a team meeting, and on the call, probably the first 30 minutes or so is about the weekend, about how they're feeling, about their friends, about just whatever, it's just stuff. So we aren't just starting off right away with just like, what's the project? What's the process? And for me, I'm a goal-oriented person too. So I have to stop myself from doing that on every single call, like going straight to what the projects are and project completion and task completion. I have to go to what's happening. Oh my gosh, you weren't feeling so well. Oh, what's happening with your cat?
Yeah.
What's happening with your dog? Even when it's this way, because I have a fully remote team. So they're all over the world and we have to build relationships of trust this way. In fact, I haven't met not one of my team members in person yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're all, because they're just like a couple in the UK and again, all over one in the Dominican Republic. And so I have to be super intentional. And I think that's what leaders want to do. We have to be really super intentional about reaching out, not just for projects and processes. We have to be super intentional about setting up a cadence of regularity, like talking to them on video. So that we don't have the same sensory experience where we smell them and we can touch their shoulder, we can hear whatever that is, right? We don't have that sensory, but there's still some sensory there. Like you can still see body language. You can see if someone's cheerful or if they're whatever, right? You can still see some of that. And then just pay attention. Don't forget what you already know.
Yeah,
I would say.
good. Yeah, that's good. And then in terms of customer service, then again, which I know is one of your forte, with a customer service, how do we, because, when you are meeting somebody in person, talking about body language and talking about a human interaction, even shaking somebody's hand, sometimes can just escalate an issue. And so with that, how do we provide customer service through electronic medium instead of the face-to-face? Because when the pandemic hit, we were doing meetings, even development review meetings with the development community customers online, and it was just video. But some of the concerns I even heard from the development community were like, we were so looking forward to coming into meet in person because the interaction and all that is really better, and it helps to build a rapport. Because so how do we make sure we still maintain that excellent customer service even through the medium that we have to use now?
I would say a couple things. One, on top of seeing them on the screen, and there's two things you can do for any person that makes them feel important and taken care of, and that's listening to them.
Yeah.
So making sure you provide the forum up front for them to put forward their issues, their questions, their concerns, and you do nothing but shut your mouth. And then after you've done that, ask inquisitive questions, ask open-ended questions to get them giving you some more, or close-ended questions if you've gotten enough information from them and you want to go straight to, providing a solution to them. That's what you do. I would say the other thing is, if you have their contact information, sending personal notes to both internal team members and external customers too is a very good habit. Yeah. So that if you're like trying to get their attention, or you really want them to know, like you appreciated the exchange on the virtuals, on the Zoom, you can send a little personal note or a gift card or something like little thing that says, I appreciate you. So it just, what I would say is that it just requires us to be more intentional. You have to be super focused, more intentional. It was never about the transaction. You know me, Nana, it was never about the transaction. It was already about the relationship. And now that we're here, it's going to be relationship first and it's the transaction second. And we got to find ways to continue to listen and make them feel important. That's how we deliver the better service. It's not anything different than what I tell you on the employee side, right? It's the same thing. Pay attention.
So, well, that's all the questions I have.
Okay. Great you had some good ones too.
Well, thank you. You really added a few things that I've been thinking about. So that's really great.
So for those who are listening right now, who might, just they're at a different place in their leadership. Either they need some extra motivation, they're at a crossroads, they just want some extra oomph. What might be a couple pearls of wisdom you'd leave them with as leaders today?
I think integrity is number one. Integrity I would say, is a foundation of leadership. If you're relating to people, you're dealing with people, and if they doubt your integrity, that's really it won't work. You can do all the things. I think once you work in integrity, people will forgive you even for your flaws. People will forgive you even for things that we are not perfect. And so once you do that, people trust you. And when people trust you, they're able to go on a journey with you, even when it comes to your team. If your team trusts you, they will take that, risk with you. They will take and working integrity, meaning that sometimes you have to say the hard things, the difficult things that are not pleasant. And sometimes you also have to admit that, hey guys, I had no idea. And sometimes your egos, you have to really not some you have to lay down your egos on, and sometimes you have to really boost those egos to really defend your team as well, because sometimes you need to stand up for your team. And if you don't have the egos, you won't be able to, you'll be a pushover, and your team will not be able to really take that risk with you because they know you don't have the backbone to support them. So the foundation of everything that happens with a leadership is really starting with integrity. And if you work in that integrity, will challenge you as well to really learn and to really, really be competent, because you can't say you are working in integrity when you're not learning and basically becoming competent yourself. That is not integrity. So that's really what I would say, focusing on that and looking at all the extras that really help you as a leader to work in integrity.
I love that. That's amazing. And you think about all the leaders who they don't necessarily live that way, and they don't even know how to do the job that they're bending over to tell somebody they aren't doing well. And it's like, wait a second, have you tried this job? Integrity might be, have you tried?
Yeah.
I've tried it too. Yes, I've tried it. And so I think that's the most important, is for someone to know that, yep, I've also tried it too. And that helps to say, oh, yep, and I know what failure looks like, or what it feels like, or what not doing so well in this area feels like, because I've been there and done that. So yeah, I love that. Thanks so much for that. Thanks. So for those who are listening, I don't know if you took any nuggets away. I know you can sense why I had Nana on here, because he's just, like I said, an amazing leader, just really a epitome of what a caring leader is like. And so if you took a lot away, definitely do share this episode far and wide. And if you can, write a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you might listen to the episodes. That helps us move up the algorithms. More people globally listen to it, the higher up we get with more stars. This is the game we play, right? This is how it works. So if you do value it, please do share it. And Nana, really, I appreciate you, saying yes to me and being here with me today. You're gracious as always.
It's been a pleasure, Heather. Thank you very much for having me as well.
And thanks everybody for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.